Hey, Printlife, welcome back to the show. We've got Professor Jeffrey Kurtz. It's kind of cool because Stephen and I took his class way back in college. So I had his class maybe 15 years ago, small business consulting. Learned a lot. We're going to talk about some of those lessons learned. And now Jeff is also running a business brokerage where he's helping business owners buy, sell their business, buy, sell real estate, and all the interworkings there. And so we're going to dive into that too. Not only that, but quick shout out that Jeff's students always do projects on local businesses. So if you want to help, if you need help with thoughts around marketing or increasing sales or this or that, send him an email. The link is in the description, and he can be able to have his students evaluate it and see if they'll accept that as a project. And, it's free. It's pretty awesome. All right, real quick, we've got a couple incredible sponsors that help put on the show every single week, and then we'll dive in. Stalls.com. If you're ready to take your custom apparel to the next level, Stalls is the leader in heat printing solutions. Not only that, but Stephen was just showing me all of the heat applied products that they're using at Campus Ink on hats and headwear. Really, really cool. Whether you're a small business just starting out or established brand that's scaling, check out stalls.com. They've got so much there: equipment, transfers, and support. But make sure to use the code HUSTLER20. That's HUSTLER20. Gets you 20% off your DTF transfer order. Multicraft_daddy. Dave at Multicraft is just killing me with the Instagram posts. I love it. AI videos, the screen printing history. He's in the lake too. Chris, you got to pop this video up here. If you need ink supplies or a daddy, Multicraft screen printing and digital supplies have been around for over 50 years. They're a legend in the space. Mention the Printavo pod that gets you 10% off your first order. Not only that, you guys know the drill. DM him. Send him a DM on Instagram. He's sending out PMI tape and other really cool things every single week. Send him a DM with your email address to enter. Okay. If you want $250 of product credit, head to easyway.com/giveaway. Easyway.com/giveaway. Just enter it. Why not take the $250, right? They are doing a monthly giveaway every single month. Easyway is launching this program, and so it's really, really cool. Check them out. Easyway support is incredible. They've got so much downloadables and resources and knowledge to be able to help. They make reclaiming screens a whole lot easier with their systems, chemicals, and equipment. Graphic Source. If you need a solution to improve efficiency and reduce costs in your art department, GraphXSource.com offers industry-leading outsourcing options for your shop by truly becoming a part of your team. They plug and play with Printavo and other shop management softwares, so handling SEPs and mockups, creative art, order management, digitizing, all that good stuff. They've been doing it for over 40 years. They've got offices all over the world to be able to help you be able to do all this stuff. But also mention Printavo Pod 24. That gets you 50% off your first order. I have met Jeff because I took his small business consulting class in maybe 2010.
I looked it up.
And actually, oh, really? That was one of my favorite classes in college business. I think because it was so realistic, and a lot of classes can be pretty theoretical in school, but this was real case studies, real problems, real things that we were talking about. And for me, that was pretty exciting.
That's always been my, the thing that I really wanted to convey, the learning experience I wanted the students to have. What does the world expect of you when you leave here? I really wanted to get everybody ready.
So, Jeff, we'll introduce you formally. Professor Jeff Kurtz. Bruce and I both went to the University of Illinois. We both took this class in college, small business consulting, BATM 445. Jeff, I don't think you taught my session, but you helped me get into this class. And then after school, when I was buying Campus Ink and joining the business, you were influential in helping me out and mentoring me. And we've had probably going on over a decade. Yeah.
I think that's right. Gosh, it's flown by.
And then coincidentally, Bruce took the same class and Printavo came out of it. So your roots run long here. But
Yeah.
so
Wait, how did Jeff help you when you were looking at buying Campus Inc. or buying into Campus Inc.?
I wonder, Jeff, if it was when I was buying out one of my business partners.
That's kind of the story I remember. I recall us having a number of conversations at your office in what was that? Was that Firehouse?
Second floor. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think I would talk with you downstairs, and just talking about how can we make this happen, and sort of the issues and challenges that you were facing at the time.
And so, for those that don't know, I bought into Campus Inc. the day I graduated college. And so there were a lot of professors at the College of Business that were like helping me out, putting together like plans, stuff. And then once I bought it, I didn't realize like, okay, now this is the real world. And immediately I had issues of like having two business partners twice my age and like, how's this all going to work? And so we would meet for lunch and just help me through it.
Well, and I think I provided a little bit of a sounding board for people that were twice your age too.
You did help bridge the gap quite a bit.
That's a pretty crazy journey, like separately, especially because, whether going through, because you were going through engineering, I was going through business, but there's definitely like a track that they try to give people, it's more conservative, and whether it's a big company, usually you're consulting or whatever it is. And it's like, no, I want to buy into a screen printing shop in Champaign. He's like, wait, what?
Yeah, the College of Business does a lot of. It seems like it used to focus a lot on getting people ready to go to big corporate, and they teach you how things are supposed to be, which, as you know, they really aren't that way in small businesses. So, fortunately, the College of Business has built up the entrepreneurship track, and there's a minor in that now, and we're opening it up to students all around campus, which is a great idea.
And Illinois now has one of the largest iMBA programs too. That you can actually take any of the courses for free, right? If you just want to just take them or something like that. Is that how it works?
Sort of. Through Coursera, you can take courses to earn a certification, and those courses can be applied toward some sort of credit, or Stephen, I can't tell you exactly how it works, but
you're not the spokesperson for the IMBA. I'm not the spokesperson. No. But it's a really good opportunity for people to break out of, or people that can't get into that full-time class mode. More and more learning is done in bits and pieces on an as-needed basis, and Coursera and LinkedIn Learning really does a nice job of helping fill that gap. So we got lunch a couple of weeks ago, and now, Jeff, you're a professor, but you also are a business broker. And so we were just talking about like how in the printing industry, people are talking about shop consolidation, getting their businesses ready to sell. I'm like, okay, we have to get you on the podcast to kind of tell the whole story, and invite you on here. And I think it'll be a pretty awesome conversation. Bruce, you were actually going to ask something about back in college days or some of the coursework. What were you going to say?
Well, I know a lot of the students do consulting with actual local businesses in the area. And I was just curious if you were, what are some interesting problems that the students have solved for in the past? Because I think some of these problems, if you kind of ignore what's being sold or, the type of industry they're in, are very common across all types of small businesses.
Absolutely. Most of the problems that people bring to us are focused on how do I sell more? And I think there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, every small business owner thinks that, gosh, if I can just sell more, all my problems will go away. And as you know, it just gets exponentially worse as the business grows. And I was watching a podcast from one of your previous guests, Mark Chowdhury, right?
Oh, Kudra, yeah.
So good. It was like listening to me talk, only he's really got a lot of other background, and especially background knowledge and expertise in screen printing. And he talked about this, there are those different stages in a business that make challenges worse. So most of the time they come to us with this marketing challenge, when really what they should look at is, let's look at the structural part of the business. How does it work? What does it need to look like to make it work? Let's break down the costs into micro detail. But we don't get many of those. So if any of your listeners want to do that, as they should, we do work with companies all across the country and around the world now.
What email can people use to reach out? And then second, I want to get into, like, if you remember a pretty specific example too of, hey, I want to increase sales, and what was the process the class went through to help that business. But yeah, so how do people contact you if they do want to be a part of that?
I'll give you 2 different email addresses if that's all right.
So we'll just throw it in the link of the thing. But yeah, like, what are some of and I remember my problem or the business that I helped. Bruce, maybe you can also talk on yours, but what are some of your favorites, Jeff, if you can talk about them? I have to leave the company name out and stuff.
I'm a terrible storyteller, but one of my favorite stories is related to how important it is to listen instead of trying to solve a problem first. Spend more time listening, understanding the why and what the problem is. And this one was such a small business that it's kind of ridiculous that we were working with them. But it was a one-person business, and it had grown over time to the point that the woman homeschooled all of the kids, and they all worked in the business, and the husband worked in the business. So it had grown over 15 years, and she couldn't figure out how to keep her records up to date. She didn't know what clients were up to date, how to contact them, and she was just overwhelmed by all of these files. And so my students came back to me after the first meeting and said, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to develop an access database for her so that she can use it to send email and keep track of everybody in detail. I mean, and this is a long time ago, but it sticks with me. And I asked them whether or not they thought she would do that. What was her reaction to that? And they said, well, she said that would be okay. I said, what do you think that really meant? Well, I don't know. We'll ask her next time we see her. So they went back the next time, and they came back. They said she didn't know what access was, and she really she doesn't know much about the internet or email. So what we'll do is we'll create something in Excel. Okay, let's see how that goes. Try that, see what she says. So they went to see her again, and that didn't work. And they came back a third time, like probably 3 weeks later, and said, we solved her problem. Well, super. How did you do this? And they said, well, she had a 4-drawer file cabinet and enough room to put all of the files in 2 drawers. And what we told her to do is, just as your customers come in, your clients come back in time after time, just move their file up to one of the empty drawers, and you'll gradually get your database updated. And she thought that was the greatest thing that she'd heard of. So the lesson from that wasn't, don't try to solve the person's problem from your perspective, solve it from their perspective, and try to find something that fits. You can't make people do things that they don't want to do. And even if it's ridiculously simple, doesn't matter if it's the best idea if they don't want to use it.
There's a quote that I remember from your class that you said, problems are like trees. And, when you first have a problem, you start to see the leaves and the branches and stuff, but then you really have to dig deeper, and then you get to the trunk of the actual problem. And I feel like I've used that a lot just running the business and just being able to think like a little bit deeper past the quick solve. Like, it's almost like the quick solve is sort of a Band-Aid to it, but like, what is the core problem that we can help redirect our efforts to? And it sounds like that's sort of similar to this story too, but yeah, I mean, that quote has really been such a big piece. 'Cause I'm sure, like, Stephen, you're constantly problem solving, right? Like you're putting out fires and doing your thing. But being able to step back and ask, wait, what is the, like, what are we actually, like, what is the goal? What are we actually looking to solve for? Because it's so easy to go 20 minutes in the wrong direction. I know sometimes we have that even with fabric of just figuring out some operational things or.
Bruce, do you remember your project?
I don't remember my project. No. What was yours?
Mine was a company that sold a tactical flashlight that was like military grade. They had worked with like the military. I think they were selling direct online, but they wanted to sell in big box stores to like get wholesale. And so it was our job. It was, how do we get this into wholesale? But really the project was, how does this product actually, what's its positioning in the space? And so we had to go into Cabela's and like Shields and like Bass Pro Shops and like, Sports Authority at the time or whatever, and like study all the different flashlights and try to figure out how what's the unique differentiation. But it was just like, what was interesting is the owner of the company wanted to get it on the shelves, but there was this half step in between of what's the position of the product? How is it actually going to be, sold the right way? Is it priced correctly? And so we did like an intense amount of studying, and I don't know how they're doing now. I'll have to check up on it. But what was really interesting is like we would be out at the client site and we'd meet with them, and then he'd blow us off for like a week or two. So we'd have to learn how to follow up with him. I mean, it's like real life stuff. But it was one of my favorite projects that we did in college. So it's just those little things. Jeff, now while also teaching, you are now a business broker. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of shops. Can you kind of describe what that means? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What does a business broker do?
So you guys know what a real estate broker does. They help people buy and sell businesses. A business broker helps people buy and sell businesses. Now, sometimes a business could have a real estate component and a business component, right? It's the property and the business. You want to sell them separately? Do you want to sell them together? How important is the property to the success of the business? Things like that. Interestingly, I've got two different platforms that I work with to market my clients' businesses. And the one that's directed at business has a whole different list of components that you're supposed to, lay out. What are the basically financials? What's the structure of the business? Things like that. And the real estate broker one is all about the property. And it's funny that the two things are so related, yet they're so compartmentalized, because a lot of times there's an overlap. So as a business broker, I'm looking for clients that want to sell a business, looking for clients that want to buy businesses, or I've got a number of buyer clients. So I'm a buyer broker, and they tell me what kind of businesses they're looking for, what are the specs, and then I go look for those. And that's kind of fun. That's searching and solving problems. So that's a good time. Selling the businesses, most of mine are under 5 million in revenue, so they're fairly small, sort of what we call the Main Street type of business. I will use Biz by Sell as a marketing platform, building out my website to also reach out to other people. I use LinkedIn marketing. You said I started my business brokerage, and I did after teaching for 25 years, and I'm still teaching. But before I started to teach, I had a business brokerage firm too. And I did my MBA and started my business brokerage firm. Started that in 97 and did that for about 5 years until I started to teach full time. I'm now 64 and trying to figure out, what's the next thing I'm going to do. And business brokerage was a really nice fit. A real estate firm came to me and asked me if I wanted to help them with the real estate side, or the business side of the real estate, the commercial real estate, decided that sounded great. It excited me. And I've continued to build this out. And it's kind of fun as sort of the CEO of the course with all of these students in that are doing consulting work. It's really easy for me to look at this from the high level objective perspective and know what those businesses should do. But when I'm in the weeds myself, it's not so easy. It's really easy to be distracted by all of the details that need to be done today. And to go back to something that Mark Kudre, he talked about the same things I talk about in class. And it's the same thing that, I don't know, Bruce, do you remember reading The E-Myth Revisited in class?
I don't think we had to read that, but Stephen loves that book.
I love that book. And it's in it is partly Covey's thing. No, begin with the end in mind. And most business owners start a business because they want to be their own boss.
What do you mean by begin with the end in mind? Like, what does that mean practically for a business owner?
It should mean, how do I use this business as a tool to make my life what I want it to be? And that's going to look different for everybody.
Damn. But I like that sentence though, because it's what do I want to make my life look like? Yeah, I don't think anyone ever thinks about that.
They do, but it's very short term. Like, I want to be my own boss. I'm tired of somebody telling me what to do all the time.
But that's kind of a cop-out answer. Yeah, like that's not like a real, like, what does it specifically mean? Like, I had someone challenge me about this, which was like, no. Like, what is the income like you generate? What is your time spent on it? What is your role? What are all the, and I didn't have answers for it. And I literally never thought about it. I mean, enough to be able to get to those more specific answers, which, everything is so month to month or week to week, day to day on it. But yeah, I don't know. I really like that. And that's why we started working on something called peak performance for a business owner, which was, I think that North Star is twofold. One is optimal. In essence, if you take your annual expenses and you have some sort of multiplier, like a 50% cushion, that's how much income you're bringing in. So you feel stable from a financial perspective. And then time-wise, you're able to control your time. As in, if you want to spend more time in the business, awesome. If you want to leave and take a vacation and you can, awesome. And that's that peak performance. And it kind of sounds like it's sort of aligned with, thinking about that from the E-Myth side.
I'm curious, Jeff, like we talk about, starting with the end in mind. Let's just put it out there. Most small business owners do not do that. Years go by in a hamster wheel, and then they're like, okay, what am I going to do next? Or how am I going to get out of this? Or I'm handcuffed to it. When a company comes to you and says, I want to sell my business, how often are they actually ready to sell? Like, from when they start talking to you to when you can actually start making the business appetizing, what is that time in between? What does it look like? Because I have a feeling you deal with a lot of hot messes. I might be projecting.
What do you mean? Your financials are only on this paper in the cabinet to the lady?
Well, it's sort of a conundrum, right? Most of the probably 50 to 75% of the clients that come to me want to sell their business because they are just so tired of it. And this goes back to what we just said. Figure out what you want this business to do for you, not what you have to do for the business. But I've actually had clients say more times than you can imagine, when I've said, so here's some things that we can do to make this business more attractive to buyers. They've said, you know what? I don't have the energy to do that. I can barely get out of bed and come into this place every day.
Because when they're ready to sell, they're tired of it.
Yeah, they hit the wall and they don't have anything left. Which, as you can imagine, a buyer comes and talks to that person, that's not really going to turn them on.
And that's almost like now you're selling a distressed business with a distressed owner. And I imagine the finances aren't great at that point, because if they were great, you'd figure it out. So what do you, it's almost like you have to start doing like therapy and coaching work with them first to be like, okay, how do we get this appetizing enough? What are some of the things when you start engaging with them? What are the things that you get like like, what do you start doing with them?
Yeah. How do you take the steak from well done to medium rare?
It's a challenge. I've had a client recently that I signed them as a client almost a year ago now, and they were down in the dumps. Business was bad, and they couldn't wait to sell. And now revenue and profits have increased, and now they're not in such a hurry to sell. So now's really the best time to sell. Don't try to hold on to this.
That seems like a perfect scenario, but like that's not the case for everyone.
Well, when you wanted to go out on a date, did you think you were going to find a partner when you were not showered and dressed badly? Or were you going to have more luck when you were? But people want to buy a business when it looks good.
But emotionally, that's such a tricky thing, right? Because you think, oh, things are just moving now. I just need to do X, Y, Z, and then I can get to the next stage. We're so close. But you're saying that emotionally, like when you think things feel really good, if the end in mind is to sell at some point, then. So what about the flip side? Is that all right? If you're able to have a business that you could draw good cash from and generate good income from as an owner, that's hard to do. That's hard to like rebuild or recreate if you did happen to sell it. So how do you think about that for helping to advise someone on selling or not?
It works a lot better if you can start this process 2 or 3 years prior to actually putting it on the market. And it's not just necessarily getting what the scenario you kind of talking about, Bruce, is, gosh, business is pretty good. Do I really want to sell it? And most of the time people don't want to, they're just tired of working. You guys have, I'm sure, seen business owners that they don't have that upside. I know you guys worked your butts off, and you still do, but I don't think you have to work as hard now as you did 4 or 5 years ago when you were trying to build everything. So when you're in that process, the potential return on investment kind of keeps you pumped up. But when your business has reached where, it's probably not going to get much better than this, profit wise, revenue, whatever, what you're really looking for is how do I get more time, is what a lot of people want.
Do you think there's a generational thing happening? Like I've been reading a lot of like this is like there's going to be a ton of baby boomer owned companies that are going to be consolidating, merging, selling over the next 5 to 15 years. Do you think it's a generational thing? Because like I think to your point, you're saying is like Bruce and I really haven't like experienced it as much. Do you think it's a demographic or an age or a generation thing? Like, what do you think it is?
Well, on the seller side, for sure, it's a age thing. On the buyer side, I think I don't know this for a fact. I haven't seen any research about it, but I've gotten inquiries about some of my listings from people in their 20s who are in that Gen Z group. And they don't want to know about, when they ask about buying the business, one of the first things they ask is, how much time does it take? And can I be an absentee owner? Which I didn't see that so much before. And it's not like they're private equity people. They're, people younger than you who want to have a business, but really don't want to have the life sucked out of them by it.
Interesting. And I think your first, my gut reaction is like, well, that's a silly thought because it's just not possible. You're just going to be in the weeds constantly. But my second thought when I look at the tree and try to get to the trunk of the problem is like, actually, that's kind of smart, right? Like, who wants to get stuck like and just be dedicating 60, 80 hours? That shouldn't be the end goal. And so if you come into it with a mindset of, that's not what I'm going to do, could you approach it way better? It's like hiring the CEO. You know, if you were running your business, I always like trying to put myself in a little third person and say, okay, if a CEO was brought in, what would the decision they would be making now, right? Because they don't have the emotional attachment when you sort of built it from nothing. They're a lot more objective when they're looking at things that they need to do. I mean, Stephen, it's to your point too, right? They grew up with the screens. They grew up with more AI that's being involved in their lives the last couple of years now. Probably a lot more efficient than us. It's just like how we were then, I think, our parents, with just being able to use the internet and all the tools at our disposal so quickly.
And maybe this is, I don't know the accuracy of it, but I follow a couple podcasters, and some of the businesses that are selling right now the most are laundromats. Do you know that? Like there's Cody Sanchez, Bruce, people are buying laundromats, and then they're buying mini warehouses, like own your own rental storage unit facility. Yeah. And it's like, I think the generation sees it as like, ooh, I could just robotically run this company. You know what I mean? So maybe they're looking at these companies as, okay, they're not that hard. We can figure out how to optimize it and stuff. And it's like a video game, you know, it's their Candy Crush.
Jeff, what are the top 3 things? So like maybe one is, you want to start preparing a few years in advance, and really button things up and have things pretty clear. What are the other 2 things that can make the business look more attractive if you are considering wanting to sell it?
You've got to make yourself replaceable, because if you operate, if the business is you, meaning if you have, a large percentage of your revenue comes from your relationships with clients, then if you sell it, when you're gone, when you're pulled out of the business loses a lot of its value. Okay. So that's a big thing. And that's sort of part of that buttoning up, but the buttoning up also is organizing the structure of the business, putting down on paper guidelines, policies, whatnot, procedures, making sure that somebody can come in and do things that have made it successful, continue to make it successful, right? Sort of the franchise model, except it's not a franchise, but the things that make franchises successful is it's replicable every day. People can come in and do the things they need to do.
So the value of the company is really dependent on, if the owner can almost be absentee when they go to sell it, it is way more valuable. And if it's clean and you can package it up and give it to someone else to do, there you go. Talk to me about a couple different things, like some of the killers of a sale. Like, what about debt? So like in our industry, a lot of people take out debt to buy equipment, $100,000 presses. How does debt, people want to sell their company, but they're like, crap, I have a loan on the business for this and this and this. How does that go into selling a company? Do a lot of companies have debt when they get sold? Like, and we're talking small businesses here.
Essentially, your business is upside down if you have more debt than what somebody can pay you. It's just like if you want to get a new car, but you owe more on it than what it's worth, you're going to own that car until you can afford to trade it in. And the debt can kill a business deal too. The sellers often say, I got to get this much money to pay off my debt. And a lot of my sellers, it's credit card debt. So it tends to not be a ton. I'm not running into people that are buying $100,000 pieces of equipment, but still it does raise that bar. It can be to the point where it makes it harder to work out terms of a deal. Gosh, I've got to get this much cash up front to make my debt go away, or it can be so much that it just makes it unaffordable for somebody to sell, for somebody to buy it.
And I forget the terminology, whether it's an asset sale or not, but most oftentimes in a small business transaction, you don't carry the debt into the new company, right? You really try to pay it down. Is that pretty common?
Right. You're going to try to avoid that as almost at all costs, unless for some reason you work out terms where, okay, I'll take on that debt because it's really a low interest rate. Maybe there might be some reason why I haven't come across this, but I can see where it would be the case. Let's say somebody wants to sell for $250,000. All right. And they want mostly cash. And let's say they've got $75,000 of debt at below market interest rate for whatever reason. Okay, well, here's what I'll do. I'll assume that debt, but I'll reduce the amount of cash I'm paying you. All right, I'm taking that off you. I'm benefiting because I'm getting a better interest rate, and you get some cash too. So I could see where, in the right terms, it might work out okay.
When Mark Cuban was going to make an investment with us, we had a little bit of debt to my old business partner. It's like $100,000. And he's like, no, I'm not. We're starting a new company. Like, you have to pay him down. So me and Jed had to fork over money and clean it up before we took a billionaire's money. But Jed was like, well, trade $100,000 here for a little bit more from a billionaire. I think that's a good win. But no, it was high pressure. Okay. So like, debt could be a killer or something that you should be thoughtful about. What about profitability? A lot of small business owners shove profit down, do their schedule whatever thing at the end of the year, 179, and they say like, oh, we don't really make any money. And then when they go to sell it, they're like, well, it will make money. How is showing profitability versus burying it? How does that affect the resale value of a company?
So the objective of most business owners is to reduce their taxes. I want to make as much money as I can, but I want to pay Uncle Sam as little as possible. When I did my MBA, and he still teaches here. Do you guys know George Kruger? He taught a class called Financing Emerging Businesses. And actually, he knew Larry Geese before Larry Geese was introduced to the deans, I think. Anyway, George Kruger said in this Financing Emerging Business classes, small businesses, he said, invest in taxes. At some point, you need to invest in taxes. I'm watching Bruce think about that. Mull that around.
Yeah. My question is, what does that mean?
Think of that extra tax you have to pay as what's the return on investment going to be? Let's work this through. Let's say I make $100,000, but I show $10,000 of income. Well, that $90,000 difference, I save how much on my taxes, whatever that tax bracket is that I'm in. But if I paid more taxes, I'm going to earn a multiple of that profit, which is probably going to exceed the tax rate that I'm having to pay. That makes sense? He could probably explain it a lot better than me, but the gist of it is,
Jed will always say, like, and Jed, my business partner, super like kind of blue collar in how he thinks about this, like napkin math. He's like, pay the taxes, put the money in the bank, let it make you 7%. It's like a privilege. And he's like, but I guess the point here is, say you made that $100,000 every single year, you had to pay $30,000 in taxes. When you try to sell your business, you can actually show EBITDA, like real profit, versus having to explain, I made it 10. I did this and that. Do you think that's more valuable when you think about the end in mind?
I'll go back to buying a car. You look at this car and it looks like it's in good shape. If it's a used car, it's in good shape. Yeah, I took good care of it. I had the oil change all the time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, it looks good. It runs okay, but I'm not sure that you really did all that stuff. I'm not sure about your story. And when you have to try to explain why your profits are lower than what you really say they are, and I'm not talking about the business owners that, maybe own a bar and, not all of the money gets recorded. Not all the sales get recorded. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this specific situation where you got to say, okay, so this is how much money we spent on insurance for the family. This is how much the truck cost us every month. But it sure would be a lot simpler if that stuff wasn't in here and I could just look at the real bottom line.
So be careful about muddling.
Yeah. So in small business, in business brokerage, we talk about sellers' discretionary earnings, right? And that's taking that net income, taking that EBITDA, and adding back all of that discretionary spending. And, it's common, would be a lot simpler if we just say, here's what the number is.
So there's something called, for folks listening, multiples, which is the multiplier of either a revenue number or a profit, like the amount of profit you generated on the year number. So let's say, you generated, 500K of profit, and the valuation is a multiple of that profit. So maybe it's 1x, which would be, okay, the business is worth 500K. If you generated 1.5 million, but 500K of profit, it's a 1x multiple, then it's 500K is what the business is worth. If it's a 2x multiple, it's, 500K times 2. What generally is a range of multiples do you see for a sub, let's call it $5 million, manufacturing type of business? And maybe what are like some of the factors that can help improve that? Or, I know it's like a little bit what we were talking about before, but like, okay, maybe you could get to 1.5 or something if you just had, right, a good, I don't know, head of operations that the buyer really likes and sees that, oh, I don't need to jump in and start doing everything. So yeah. So what do you see for the multiples and what can help improve that?
I thought you might ask that. So I looked this up, and it's usually a range. Okay, sellers' discretionary earnings typically like 1.5 to 3.
Oh, okay. And by discretionary earnings, is that literally the profit before the owner's pay is taken?
That's what we were just talking about. Here's the profit plus all the stuff that we paid ourselves that we run through the business. Okay. So it's totally discretionary.
1.5 to 3. So if you are running $1 million business and after you take out the muddling and whatever profits left, and discretionary wouldn't be owner's pay because you still have to pay yourself as an employee, right? Like
you may overpay or you may underpay. So an adjustment needs to be made for that.
Right. So say it's $100,000, you could sell your print shop for $100,000 to $300,000.
That's the thought. Now, whether it happens depends on a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of the things that we've talked about already. How pretty is the business? Can it run without you? And a lot of them can't. This is kind of a funny story. I did a valuation once for a business. One of the things I always ask is, how important are you to the business? I'm trying to get at the answer to this question. And the owner says, oh man, I take time off all the time. This place runs just fine without me. Never any problems. And I'm not kidding you. Within 30 seconds of him saying that, somebody from his office came out and asked, how many rolls of paper towels do you want me to buy this week? And I looked at him. I said, I think you're pretty important to the decisions that are made here.
Rolls of paper towels.
You have to buy the toilet paper.
There was definitely a time where I was like, I need to order the like office equipment. You have someone start, and if they're using a laptop or something, they keyboard, mouse, laptop, whatever. And it was like, oh, I remember thinking, well, what mouse? Like, should it be a wireless mouse? But then I have to buy more batteries. If it's wireless mouse, should it be a wired mouse? It was just like stupid stuff like that. That it was just, why am I even thinking about that? But you think that it's important to take some of that goofy stuff on.
And that's probably the hardest thing is like, you might have $200,000 of equipment, but if the company isn't showing much and you look at that multiple, you might just be selling the company for equipment plus a little goodwill, and that's it. And so if you have an equipment loan, you have to be really careful because the business might not be worth anything. And I've seen, we actually just had someone on the podcast where they merged businesses, unmerged the businesses, and the other owners were so burnt out, they just handed her the keys and say, you run it. We don't want it anymore. Crazy, you know? Now, okay, so we talk a little bit about multiples. What about actually financing? We've heard this term seller financing. How often do businesses actually, like, say we're selling the company for $500,000, does the owner actually get, or the seller actually get, a $500,000 check at closing? Is that pretty common, or no? That's not common.
Really pretty uncommon.
Okay, so what's a typical structure? How do you see them?
20 to 10 to 25, sometimes higher, depends on the asking price. But the seller is often going to have to carry some back. There's a limit to how much debt that company can carry. That's sort of the acid test. You know, if I'm paying you for this business, I'm probably going to finance some of it and put some cash into it. And I'm going to try to minimize the amount of cash I have to put into it, because I also have to have some working capital. When it's all said and done, I have to be able to pay my employees, cover all my expenses, pay myself a wage that I'm comfortable with, and pay down the debt. So that's sort of the acid test of whether this price is reasonable.
What's like the terms? How long does that seller financing usually look like?
You want to keep it as short term as you can. 5 years is as long as I'd feel comfortable with it, right? Because the buyer can totally screw it up, and you don't
You could not make the payments.
Right. Yeah, and you know, when you get a regular loan for a car, for a home, or there's working capital, even a working capital loan that holds inventory and receivables as they've got a lien on that. That stuff might not be there if the business fails. The bank's going to be without anything. The seller is the last person that's going to get paid if a business fails. So you really want to minimize your risk as a seller. But the fact is, you're probably going to have to take some back.
I was going to say, when I bought into Campus Inc., my business partner, Jed, and our other partner, they structured a 5-year deal where the business would pay it off over, I think it was 6 years. And each year the amount would get more and more, so that the acid test, what you were alluding to, Jeff, is we didn't sweat it the first couple of years. And then finally, like on year 6 was like the biggest payment, which the business was much bigger then and we didn't even feel it. So there are really interesting ways where you can accelerate it. There's all these, and I guess that's what you do. Bruce, you were going to ask something. Go ahead.
Yeah. And then how much does someone like you, Jeff, or a broker charge, like a range of fees if someone wants to either sell or buy? Is it like a real estate type of transaction thing, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we're paid based on the sale of the business. There will be there's sometimes different levels of fees. For example, the first $1 million might be at 8%. Okay, so sell the business for 100,000. I'm going to get 8,000. Up to $1 million, it'll be 8%. Then over that $1 million, the next strata is paid at 6%. From 1 million and $1 to 3 million or something. And so that could increase. But basically, it's about an 8% rate. And often there's a retainer that's charged upfront too. And there's usually a minimum commission.
Jeff, I was just going to ask, after the transaction, there's this whole like change management where, the old owner might stay on as a consultant, and I've heard of issue where that's gone really south. Do you play a role in that, like after the business is actually, the transaction's done, or are you just like, good luck?
When I sold businesses in the past, it was, I wasn't involved. And I didn't maintain that relationship with the seller. This time around, I intend to, as much as I can, to help out. And, a lot of times when people sell their business, they're left with a hole in their life, partly because they haven't thought about what I'm going to do next. And, so they may have a lump sum of money what are you going to invest that in? And I'll connect them with financial advisors, or you can invest it in real estate. Commercial real estate's a really nice investment to take over, to take the place of that time that you've spent in the business. And maybe it's sort of like buying a laundromat or what was the other thing you said? Laundromats. Oh, self-storage warehouses. Yeah, you've got this income coming in and there's something for you to do, but it doesn't take 80 hours a week like your business used to. So yeah, I see now that I'm older, it's more important to maintain those relationships.
This is Professor Jeffrey Kurtz. We'll drop Jeff's email down in the description below so people can connect as well after, as a part of either the student program or SVN North Star, which is his brokerage. He's been running for some time now too. Thanks, Professors, for joining. Hopefully this was helpful. I feel like we've been covering like buying and selling businesses either purposely or accidentally, like falling into it deeper over time. But I love the thought of running the shop with an end in mind, whether you decide to or not. It just helps really rethink and plan out your role in the business and the structure of it even better. So we'll see you guys on the next week's episode. Have a good one. Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully that was informative. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications if you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy all the stuff we're putting out, it's really helpful. We love to just be able to see it. That means that we're doing a good job. To subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and hit the like button. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.